Climate change crickets, isn't it? They're just going to shove this down our throat, aren't they? And you know what? Y'all are going to let them. And that's going to be the shame on us. It really is. There's enough of us. I don't know why people are so resistant. I've started to talk with more people that we're starting to get a handle. There are more people coming on to what I say, what people, other things. I mean, more people are researching lots of things, finding out that it really is a dirty deal what's being done. And they're also finding out they want to do something about it. And and everyone seems to be, a lot more people are on the uptake even so, than on the action phase. And so, I keep telling you, as long as we're not in a mode of, even independently in a unified action to go against this whole thing, these other people with a plan are going to win. They're going to win by default. I wish it wasn't that way. I really would have a whole lot better life to live, I thought, than what I've found in the last 30 years. It had just taken my attention. And then now it's taken my literal intention, not attention, but intention, to at least become an example of being a stick in the spokes of this plan. Now, I'm pausing. There's there's a lot that goes through my mind, and I catch myself. And I'm supposed to be a broadcaster, and I'm supposed to be giving you this information. But, folks, it's just a lot to think about in trying to convince people to get involved. And it isn't easy at some point. It's very difficult. War is that way, even though I don't intend to disrespect anybody that was duped into going to fight for war and lost friends and buddies and whatever and maybe got maimed and maybe even didn't get anything and just escaped and will just have the witness of war in their mind forever now. What a tragedy we are as a people across the globe to continue to allow this stuff. There's other wars that they come on us. They call us occupational and conquest. There's two different statuses. This climate situation is exactly that. And I keep forgetting it. I'll do it one more time now. I'll remember when I start this broadcast to do it better. The code for this episode is BTWRLM 159. BTWRLM 159. And then you put the word blogcaster and you'll be able to get the content. If you're on anybody in the past cast, you can hear this content. You can go read the content. I'll talk about this that I'm referring to. But there's a lot of people talking about how already, and this has kind of amazed me, doing this quite a few decades now, and something changed in me where I just dedicated myself to this problem. And so it doesn't mean that there's not questions about do you continue and this and that. You still always have that. There's doubts about what's going on. The biggest doubts in the beginning, the first 20 years, was whether I'm, as I'm looking at this thing, am I really sane? There's so many people saying different. And you end up having to take your own path. And that's again, the friends, host friends that we do, they have their intuition about how this works. Like, Gary L. has the road less traveled. You end up taking that road less traveled, and you end up qualifying that, and you have to take that journey, and you have to make a decision. Do you continue? And yes, there's obstacles that come in front of you, and you have to decide. Those are hard decisions. You have to decide to kind of go beyond them and continue anyway. But if you don't, the whole situation turns to what you're seeing as a violation to you, and you become essentially the accessory to the crime you've witnessed. To a lot of people that may not see it yet. And so a lot of people are coming and talking with me about, well, how do we continue? It's just like, it seems like it's just something you can't get done. There's just so many people that just don't get it. And there's so many people that think they get it that don't get it. And my only observation is, I don't know. My intention now is to go against this thing that I see. And I see something. It's almost the virtual thing you see. But it's there. And it responds. And that virtual thing that you have to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear is a thing. And you have to also understand it's not a thing you're going to attack directly. I can just tell you that. You're going to have to figure out all the ways around that thing, because that thing is not what you think it is. And so it takes us stepping up. It takes us not just researching and researching and researching. At some point, you have to step into the battle. But I ask you not to make yourself a target more than you need to be, and not to put yourself in jeopardy, because at least the way I've been looking at it, and I don't know where it came from. As I was talking to another friend yesterday, I don't know how I started noticing lots of people called patriots were doing it all the wrong way. Instead of just jumping in with the herd of the patriots, I said, wait a minute, there's something that's not making sense here. And so I started looking very carefully at what people were doing. And, a lot of people were doing it wrong, whether that was intentional or whether that was just out of the sense of wanting to stop the nonsense immediately. It was still going to be wrong. And I took that other path. I took another path, and it's gotten me a lot farther, I think. And if I can communicate it to other people, it gets them a lot farther than I've seen lots of other people go. It doesn't answer all the problems you might hear, but it sure gets us a lot closer. That's why I say there's probably no solution here. It's just whether or not you succumb to an occupation or a conquest. And that's for each one of us to decide. So what do you do? Do you decide to stop or not? Do you decide what's it worth? That's for everyone to decide, but that's the decision you make when you start seeing the crime against us. Really, do you want to be the accessory to that crime, or do you want to be the one that tries to solve the puzzle of how it got on us and how we didn't throw it off and how we might be able to? And each one of us has to do that, and that we can. Because I keep telling you, it's not that hard. It really, it's just amazing. Every week I go through talking to people that are engaged. It's not a question for them about the engagement. I don't have to drag them to the water and trying to get them to drink water. No, they're coming to me like a sponge. And I give them what I have. I wish I could give them more, because people can only take so much at a time. You have to listen to people. They may be interested, but you can't tell them how much you know. You can't really overwhelm them. It leaks out, but you try not to overwhelm them. You give them enough and maybe go just a little bit more to let them know there's more even beyond. And then you let them go do their work. And I have people I work with that talking to other people I can't talk to. They won't listen to me. They won't talk to me. They think I'm crazy. They think I don't have this foundation. They think I'm arrogant because I have a different view of how to approach it. And I will not bend that principle I've found for myself. And this is the distinction. You find the principles for yourself that are really the principles, not the ones you hear on the internet. Not the ones that you might think I'm even following. You make that decision on your own, because when it comes down to it, you are in a war. And you will have to be fortified internal to you. I can't do that for you. The cricket that asks the question why becomes less the cricket. You'll always have some cricket nature in you. It's just the nature of us. But you learn to vanquish that pretty well after a while, and then you destroy it in you after a while, and now you're taking that responsibility, and that seems to be the big deal. That's the choice you take to take on the responsibility to stop this nonsense of these people that would bring upon the world impositions that they think they know better for you. And they as a group know better than everybody else on the world, on the earth. That they will make decisions that they represent is for you and by you, which when you look at it now, we look at it more and we analyze this thing even better. And as I told you, doing the analysis here, this climate treaty, these climate things are war crimes. Do you know how, is my question, is my thing to explain to you. I'm not focused on these climate things. I'm not focused on these international treaties more than what they can do to expose the crime. They're a means to an end for these people. You can't focus on them. It's partly why I only do this news, because I just run along. These are things that are telling us that those are occurring, but it's the underlying matter that you're focusing on. I can just tell you, you don't attack the core directly. It's too strong. It got too strong against us. There are also a lot more of them in a lot better position in places of authority that the most of the herd will agree or rail against. And this is the problem. You rail against it wrong. It's just as if you agree, because you are ineffective in stopping in arresting the crime against us. And so my take here behind the Woodshed is try to bring, as these notices on the news come up and talk to us, it has been my intention not to tell you what to do, just to tell you that it's there and it needs to be done, and give you my insight and my experience on how certain things we've addressed this, and what we start to focus on, and how we take this notice and actually go someplace else to interfere with how they're moving it along. And I'm just amazed at the few core people I work with, how talented they are and knowledgeable. Their own interest brings up the skill that's needed to stop it. And you have to do that. There's no way you're going to do it without going somewhere and engaging somebody and really challenging them. And the only way I've found to successfully challenge these people, because they have no basis and no foundation. And then for the United States, truly, folks, the United States laws, and United States of America, I should say, laws, and on the obligation and soil disposal side, really are the mark. They really tell the bright line tale of what you're supposed to do. At least that's what I've found. That's what I walked myself up to. I've recognized that, and I can see how all these things violate very principal foundational things in the United States of America. That is the bright line you want to go to. Because that's written in law, that's black and white. And why is that important? Because there's nobody with a lesser foundation that can prevail against those obligations and duties. By the very government that allows them itself to be interfered with by insiders, to be eaten out from the inside, to be brought down from the inside. That you have the power to go in and say, what you're doing here is a crime. And I told you before, but I can't help it anymore. All these people inside the government that are causing this unrest, breach of the peace, are criminals. I have no other word for them. And now I've told you last week we did the analysis, and I can show on the point of what you see, the sustainable development or agenda, sustainable development in the United States of America as it was defined and told to us, or Agenda 21, it was more properly exposed to, because that's where the international order really originates out of, from the purpose of actual implementation. So they called it what it was, the Agenda 21 issue, which was a shortness for the program of action for the 21st century, was this plunder and parasiticism that goes on in the world. That is immediately contrary to the laws of the United States regarding soil disposition and production and producers, which is where I have been telling you this, and I don't know how many people really listen to what I'm saying. I notice a lot of people will continue talking about stuff that really isn't right, even after I've talked about the subject matter. So I still have this ongoing question for myself even. Who's listening at what? That if when you get to the foundation of what's going on, it's not a question. And you have the bright line that nobody can cross without becoming, it's their third rail. That bright line for you is their third rail. It kills them immediately. They're dead if they touch it. And they know this. This should tell you something. They know this. That we're not bringing this stuff as a nation. We're not focusing on this production, land disposal distinction in the world regarding the United States of America and its land disposal laws, and the and the purpose, which was for lawful uses of the land, to typically in production, producing the raw materials for the nation itself. That there is nothing based in these land disposal relationships and authorities that can come contrary other than a criminal, is why I keep bringing this point and issue to y'all to try and get you to understand. If you go there, stop all these other ideas, and you start there from the foundation, from the law of the land, the natural law of the land. We don't talk about natural law. Get to the land, get to the soil, actually. See, land that term has been stolen. That's what your land use is about. How about soil use? How about soil disposal? Let's go there instead. That is the bright line. And when you look at that and you start understanding what's going on, and you start understanding what these people do with this climate and how they're doing it, you realize it's a war crime what they're doing. Now, you can hear me say that. You can either believe me because you trust me, or you can just roll your eyes and say, oh, here's another lunatic. It doesn't matter to me because I've done the black and white study. I see exactly what this is about. I can articulate how this is. In fact, I just did. I had to. As part of what we do, part of a response I had to make through a Jefferson Mining District. Now we're putting people on notice as we go. Does it stop them? Well, no. Again, we're dealing with criminals. This is no joke. We're dealing with the most hardened war criminals here, actually. Where I've been telling you is just criminals. These people are beyond being war criminals. I don't even know how you get there. It's beyond my comprehension, I think, to understand that. These people can't even follow the law that's a violation to war crimes. They're violating even that. to show you the type of demon you're up against, and if I can say it. And again, I don't judge these people because we don't know if they really do know or not. We've run across quite a few people that they were just brought up like you and I and everybody else. Before I had my rose-colored glasses slapped off my face, I was living the same idea. Well, this is just what we do. This is how we do it. I went through the education system, and now I'm a university provost, and so this is what I do. They're honestly just doing what they do. So I can't say those are criminal. They may be accessories without knowing it. But again, I don't really necessarily believe everybody's a criminal, but you can test those people out. When you do a notice to show cause on somebody, and they have an obligation to respond to you, and they don't, there's one of two things going on. It's directly a fraud, or their silence is an acquiescence. And when you get into soil disposal law, you have them both. I wish people really understood the depth of what I'm saying sometimes, and I don't even really sometimes appreciate it until we go work with it. You have them both because there's a relationship in all these government officials to the land disposal, use, and production. Not as defined by the UN, but the way it was supposed to be done in the law, which you can find. When there is no ability by the authority to come against you, and they also have a duty to respond. If they don't respond, that's fraud in the office. The other side is, because of that relationship, you have a contract, as they say, express or implied contract. It's tied to a property. They have to respond through the implied or express contract. That the relationship of the disposal, the use of the land, and you may not understand this if you live as an urbanite about this, and because you're a renter or you have a house, you've lost your connection to the land, but that it's in there in your patents. So they've got us so distant from our connection to the soil, the land, law of the land. That's how they're dealing with us, and that's how they deal with us. You don't even know to put up the right discussion that the law of the land tells them if they have an express and implied contract to respond. When they didn't, that's the other violation. That's silence. See, the first one where the obligation and duty, that's fraud. When they fail to respond and they have the obligation and duty to do so, that's fraud. When they have a contract that you can rely on, implied or expressed, and they don't respond, silence is acquiescence. It's on contract side. And this is how I think. This is how you should think. And I shouldn't say should. You'll think how you think. What I'm saying is that when you start thinking this way, you start to lay out as I've told you before, the categories of possibilities and potentials, the categories of knowns that you've researched that are beyond question for you, not because other people tell you, but you have found it out. You have gotten it from source materials. That you understand that this is a right that you have by contract or by regulation, by obligation and duty on the official, and you impose upon them either this fraud or this tacit acceptance. I hear lots of people using these terms, but they don't understand how to use them. They use them by voice. They don't use them in application. Sometimes when I think about that, it really drives me nuts because they have the secret. It's like using a screwdriver where you needed a wrench of a certain size. And weren't even smart enough to go get the crescent wrench, which is not the proper wrench, but it can do the job. We get back today, why I'm even talking about this stuff, it comes up for the climate, was that we've blown through April 22nd, that's Earth Day, and on Earth Day, if you didn't know this was a plan, you didn't know how this is all working out, or even if you did, understand the confirmation of how this is working down, this is the plan. 175 nations signed historic Paris Climate Treaty on Earth Day. Earth Day was that day fabricated in 1970 or so to impose and impress and be the propaganda tool for this agenda that's been coming on you, to say that you were a violation against your own environment that you were evolved into. They even if they believed in evolution, they violated that, haven't they? There's nothing that you're going to find that's foundational about what they do, either an oxymoron or directly contrary to what laws are and nature is and how things go. It's certainly against the disposals condition in the United States of America. But the United States is involved in this Earth Day climate deal. The world leaders of 175 countries signed the historic Paris Climate Accord. The word accord, you need to go research. International law, I keep telling you this is about international law. If you go learn a little bit about that, you'll you'll come to the better terms and how to use them better than what I hear going off as newfound and new age philosophies about government. Everybody working everything they shouldn't be doing to try and avoid the deal that they should be doing, and or just trying to make the pain stop, which is not the answer. The climate accord on Friday, which is non-binding, so anybody who brings this stuff up, you should have this as evidence to show this is non-binding. What you're doing is imposing a foreign imposition that's non-binding on any country or any government. And as you, especially I talk in the United States of America, because we do have these property rights. They're there. I told you before, looking at it, you can find in the Constitution that the property rights are listed in the Constitution, even if they're only referred to, let's say, as mine or agricultural haul roads, and those are not under the regulation authority of the commerce side or the activity side, which is your motor vehicle code. And that the motor vehicle code reflects and recognizes the primary uses of the highways. And those are not regulated. Those are regulated by the grant, by the contract. Why doesn't anybody see this? Why don't we discuss it that way? Instead of fabricating all these things using a bunch of court cases that don't matter anymore. That really don't matter once you find out it's about this relationship between the disposal and what the land was given over to do and what it's granted to do, and that can't be interfered with, and your patent says forever. Why your highways and your road law, forget your motor vehicle code, folks. Go to your road law. Those roads that are out there were created by producers for the benefit of producers, for y'all. That's why you don't touch them. And if you do touch them, and the jurisdiction is given to local entities to touch them, in very rare needs, and they can't ever eliminate them. Think about that. They have to make provision for their existence. Even if they do eliminate one, it has to be invested in another place. All that's not underneath your motor vehicle code. So when you start to see how this disposal law actually works, to me, it gives me bright line to be able to differentiate, and it shows me the chasm between in the state, connected corruption, legalizations, and the other, which is untouchable by them. If it's only touchable by them if they're a criminal, that they're thieving it, they're plundering it. They come and take and they suck off of you because you're working off the land. That's a theft of your property, and that's a crime. It's that fast. So this climate deal comes on, and it's an accord. Go look at what that is. It's non-binding. So the point is that this notice is telling you, oh, we're making up this stuff, and we don't have the lawful authority to make it more than just a non-binding agreement that we're going to slow the rise of harmful greenhouse gases. It's a non-proven assumption, not even an assumption here. Harmful greenhouse gases. But here's the statement that I wanted to get to. We are in a race against time. UN Secretary General, if you didn't think this was a war, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon told the gathering of the United Nations headquarters in New York, the era of consumption without consequence is over. We're in a race against time, folks. I'm telling you, this internet accelerated that race. We have the power to be understanding of what they're doing against us, and they know it. Because here's the point. There is no race against time with respect to what they're talking about. It's a fraud. It's made up. So what's the race against time we're talking about? I said you're not going to get at these people directly. You're not going to hear it directly from them. You have to be able to have the eyes to see and ears to hear. And you see, the race against time is not against this coming together to impose this climate accord. It's them being found out before they lock you down. That's your license, if we needed one, to go after them. You still have a bit of time. So I keep telling you, we're on the edge. We're so close to the edge. Now, they go on and on and on, the poor and vulnerable and all that. This is women, children, and the indigenous nonsense that they keep using as stalking horses. That you just forget all that, because the first part's a fraud. It doesn't matter what they say after that. We are in a race against time. Well, no, that's not true. Because what they're talking about, they want you to believe they're a race against time against the harm of these greenhouse gases, which is not even plausible, first of all. Secondly, what they're talking about is really just a definition. That hasn't been proven either. Notwithstanding, they will come to you and talk to you about all the science they're using to do this. It's scientism at best. Scientology. It's the study of what we think we know. How do you have peer review for that? I guess that we think we know a lot of stuff. This is the basis by which we are being taken down, and this is how we can attack them, and it's so easy to do so. As I keep saying it, you just get involved. If it didn't work for you before, if you hit the courts and you got slammed down by the courts, well, that's organized crime. I bet you didn't realize. You thought it was organized crime, but I bet you didn't realize how it was organized and criminal and how far it went. And you didn't really look at that battle and say, wow, that's going to be an interesting one to beat, because if I can't just go here to take this system down. It is systemic, and that was the problem. This is an international systemic problem. But I've found out the United States of America, the laws on soil disposal answers every bit of this. And very quickly. Very quickly. And all I'm dealing with is people that are in the seats of decision, wherever they are, like anywhere, just anywhere, that have been told different by people that they thought were authorities, like the bar members, the attorneys, who are criminals in their own right. And they've declared such. They're war criminals, folks. It's right in their paperwork. Again, I've been talking about going to the Lieber Code. They have the rules of usufruct, the rules for usufruct, what an occupying force does to all your property. And I've asked you to when you look around and you don't have the rights you thought, when you flap your pamphlet that says the Constitution, it says I have this thing and it's not working, I'm asking you, you better stop flapping that pamphlet and take a step back and think, maybe that doesn't work. Maybe that's not really in the existence. And I said, well, look for the definition of what you are that is in existence, and then maybe use that instead as the better reality. That when you look at the Lieber Code, it pretty well dictates to us what we are dealing with. And I told you that the war criminals are even beyond international law war criminals. That's what the United States government did in the NDAA. In the memo that says we're throwing out the Lieber Code and international law, and we're going extrajudicial. And I went to crickets, and most people don't understand what that means, didn't understand the depth of that, and don't understand how lawless this world has become, that the war criminals, they're beyond. They went extra, uber war criminality. It's beyond war almost. It's just an abject, I don't even know. So we reduce it down to what we have. As I said last week, where we got to go? We got a galactic federation we get to go to, because that's how bad this has gone, and we are sitting as crickets against it. And I say that in the general. And so you have to understand this war that you're up against is almost, well, it is, I think it's perpetual. And you have to engage it, otherwise it takes you down. It's just the way it works. And so you can't put your mind on, you can't give yourself short-term, fully encompassing goals. You have to give up the fact that you're going to solve anything by next year. I'm telling you, I've been doing this three decades, and I'm still working it out. That pool of action, though, is getting bigger and bigger. That evolutionary engagement's getting more interesting for us, and more adept at stopping this stuff. My only observation is not enough people want to pick it up. Or if they do it wrong. A lot of people just do it wrong. I don't know why. I haven't figured that part out in us. It's just what they've done to us, I think. Good people, but the people that really embrace is the ones that come and want to and become. And I know they're the sponge because of what the questions they're asking, and they're the response to things I tell them. The fact that they'll come to me with even a phrase, I say, well, why don't you reframe that phrase this way, because the law says it this way, and then approach your problem with that in mind, and then you tell me what does that do. And just having that correction is enough to change their focus on what they thought they were doing and directs them in more directly to where they need to be going. Just in that moment. That's why I tell you, one-on-one, I can hear very quickly where someone's gone off of where they thought they wanted to go. And I can put them on the more correct path. And this is what we're not doing. We're not taking that information and utilizing it to correct our paths that in large part I can find have been in error. Why we come to this day? Because we've been doing the wrong thing. Didn't even know, first of all, that it was there. Then we did the wrong thing. And then there's only a few of us that may be doing the more right thing, and not enough to actually kill this whole deal. Notwithstanding the fact that despite this, 175 nations have agreed that 7 Earth Day predictions that failed spectacularly is in a list. Now you get to now read it. If you didn't even know that they made these things, this is more proof you can take to somebody. It says, you make all the Earth Day and you made all these dire doom nation on humanity, so-called. And ever since you did it since the 70s, not one of these things has happened. And that's pretty consistent with so-called global warming, isn't it? Because it's just an idea that they want you to buy into. And we have to have a righter mind than that. We have to live by a better principle than that. I'm not so smart to not do it by some foundational place to go that becomes the objective basis. Why I say go read the black and white. When it's black and white and people agree that it's law, and those of us that have researched found that it's not a bill of attainder or ex post facto imposition for us as producers or land possessors, and that should be every one of you, even with the contract for your rent. If you know how to get back to the land, you're one of those as well. That's all of us. See, there's no bit of land that a private party has in any capacity in the United States of America that doesn't have this contract underlying it that was supposed to be protected by the government itself. The overriding imposition of which is a felony in the first place, and then the non-use of the property by their new regulations becomes that war crime. The conservation of a use becomes that war crime that no one really understands. I'm just coming onto it to be able to articulate it. I've seen it. I just didn't understand how to say it. The better you get about this and the more work you do to start to seeing it, the vocabulary comes together to be able to do so. These people bring a vocabulary and they do this thing. They make these statements that we all buy into, public buy-in, and it diminishes us that much more. Or we don't arrest it, and it continues to be like a wound to fester over into time until they get enough people that are sickened by the wound that they'll do whatever they're told. There's always these dynamics they use against us. They're fascinating. Again, I've told you, read the Protocols of the Elders of Zion as a manual for your frailty, and you'll see how they play us like fiddles. It's just quite amazing how vulnerable we are, despite how tough we think we are. Here's the 7. I'm just going to read them. You can find out what they are to get more in depth. You can build a dossier for yourself on the crime against you. You can bring it to somebody and say, well, you keep talking about all this science-based nonsense, and then what about these 7 frauds that were put on humanity, so-called, the little animals out there being ruled over by the elite, the evil light. Civilization will end within 15 or 30 years. Harvard biologist George Wald warned shortly before the first Earth Day in 1970 that civilization would soon end unless immediate action is taken against problems facing mankind. Now there's the word, mankind. Not to disparage you women, but mankind. They don't say humankind, do they? See, so this is before it actually gets going, and then they start to adjust it. 100 to 200 million people per year will be starving to death during the next 10 years. That should have happened by 1978. Population will inevitably and completely outstrip whatever small increases in food supplies we make. That was stated in 1970. It was also then revisited by Paul Ehrlichman, who made that statement, stating in 2009 that perhaps the most serious flaw in the bomb was that it was much too optimistic about the future. These are pretty mentally challenged people if you're looking at being peaceful in the world. Because their agenda, you're looking at them speaking about what their anticipation is. No, I assume that populations in places have outstripped production, but you start looking at it, it was these people that got in the way, like they're trying to do in Klamath. They're trying to rip out dams that actually were the projects of which were put in place to increase agriculture. These are the same people ripping the dams out. This is an insanity, and we keep agreeing with it. Number 4, demographers agree almost unanimously 30 years from now, the entire world will be in famine. That was stated in 1970. They're working up the fervor up to get you to buy into this this nonsense to get you to agree with where they're going. And number 5, in a decade, urban dwellers will have to wear gas masks to survive air pollution. I don't know if it's gone to gas masks, but China could possibly be close, but you see what they're doing. And you understand they do that in order to bring more regulation and ultimately more control also. They cause the problem they need to fix. But they fix it in the direction that they need to prosper. They're prospering. Again, the Agenda 2030, which relates to all this, is if you look at prosperity in its definition, it has nothing to do with actual prosperity and wealth. It has to do with you being equally indebted through austerity and completely and perpetually in debt. And you start out with the Pope saying you have on your life, coming into this life, you have a moral debt upon you, on you, to the rest of everybody else. I mean, it boggles my mind. Boggles my mind that we listen to this nonsense and we see the stories that were preceded us. Boggles my mind how we, as people, deny what we are coming to hear, to deny the best parts and agree to parts that are made up fairy tales. Number 6, childbearing will be a punishable crime against society unless the parents hold a government license. Well, again, China, it looks like that might have happened for a while, but even that relented, didn't it? Number 7, by the year 2000, there won't be any more crude oil. I don't even want to get into all these things, folks. They're just nonsense. I've talked about a lot of these in other places. Do we have no more crude oil? No, it's been almost 20 years past the time, and we still have it. In fact, there's so much, it's causing actually problems to the point I understand that Saudi Arabia had to take out a loan of $10 billion for something because of their projections of the failure of the revenues from the oil that's so glutting the world. And they're actually just waiting right now for the glut to go down. We're slowly consuming all that, but there's so much right now that they don't know what to do with. They're actually, the brokers are spending millions and millions of dollars to have oil sit offshore in tankers because they can't get into the port. And the other thing, this is the other answer to the climate deal, they want to drop all this because of carbon dioxide. There's not doing any viable alternatives. There's alternatives, but they're not viable. And the parts that would be viable, they're not actually implementing. As I told you a long time ago, if the United States of America as a government wanted to stop fossil fuels for most everybody and reduce transmission line faults and failures and the costs, they would give you solar power, even only the 20% conversion rate. It's still coming in for free to your place. They would give you solar panels. I explained how these tax write-offs all work. They'll give you tax credits. It's like paying you to do it. And they'd hand you an electric car. And a story I heard, I don't even know if I'm going to give, if it's on my board or not. People were made, the company in California, I think it was, put 128% more capacity on the house than the house needed. And so the power company didn't want to pay back the extra power. They wouldn't even give them anything. It was an error on the installation company's side. But the point is, so why didn't they just get an electric car and use that 28% overage? No, they go to the other side. They say, no, we're not going to get paid. See, the government doesn't want you to be actually self-sufficient, even with only a 20% conversion rate on the original solar cells, notwithstanding the losses through the electronics and the storage and all that stuff. On and on and on, it's not so perfect. But it's pretty cool. These people were able to produce 128% the power over their house. I'd say throw an electric car in there. Use that 28% to power your transportation, if I can call it that, your travel. But see, the government doesn't want to do that. That would solve a problem. They can't do anything by solving problems. It's better to license crime. It's better to illegalize something, to license that now found crime. As I speak now, this 420 date, 420, the legalization of pot was the control and registration and taxation of it. If you legalize something, the governments get to control it. It doesn't matter that it's a lie, whatever the reason is. And like the war of terror is another one. Weather Channel founder, despite the agreement now, the brilliant people in Washington, D.C., they agree to this climate accord. Weather Channel founder slams global warming. The theory has failed. This is in the face of Bill Nye, the scientism guy. This guy's really become a buffoon. Anyway, John Coleman comes out again, founder of the Weather Channel, to explain science has taken backseat at the UN, get politics out of the climate debate. It's not even a debate, folks. This is the problem. Even John Coleman has it wrong. This is just a fraud on the world, and we got people that are promoting it, and then you have those people that we're scientists, our scientists are specialists in their field, saying it's been a fraud, and notwithstanding that statement, the government agrees. Obama sends his Secretary of State to agree to this climate accord. There's no distinction here. There's no rationale. There's nothing but it's a straw man. The whole thing's a straw man anyway, but I mean, it's a straw man condition that they get you to agree, and if they keep saying it long enough, most people will agree. Or, what you do worse is you shut down. You just say it's not important, I don't want to hear about it no more. And then they get away with it because then you don't think it's tough enough or big enough to go stop. And you don't understand the dynamic that has to work. The dynamic is, see, like in the Klamath issue, they knock down those dams. All of a sudden, you don't have the water. They desert it. They cause a desert now of a desert that was there that the project was supposed to solve, and it did solve. They had a power plant inside. Where is this power they're going to get now to transfer the water when people need it into places when they take the power plant out that's inside those dams? Are you going to rely on 20% solar power efficiencies and the waste and the dirtiness of those industries that make those solar cells? Great technology, but there's a lot of costs that are not talked about. No, see, they're not going to be able to do any of that. But no one's thinking that far ahead, and no one holds the feet to the fire of those people that ought to be thinking that far ahead. So that again, they're relying on you doing nothing or doing nothing correct. Again, you can do stuff, but if it's not the correct thing, they win. They win, they get these things through, and so now the dams come out, the power's not there, and your rates go up because they're going to go smart. It's smart for them, not you. And your rates have to go up because they actually have caused a deficit production, and they hope that you don't use, and that's the savings that they're doing, that they don't have to produce, which they argue is the point of conservation that they needed. If they don't have to produce it because you're not using it, then they've won. They've less carbon to put in the atmosphere. But no one stops to think, but the dam wasn't producing carbon in the first place that you took out. This is the stupidity behind all this. That you, locally, to any place, everyone's got water. I don't know where you all get it. But somewhere, there's a dam someplace that got taken down or is going to be taken down, and they're going to raise the rate of your water. They're going to raise the rate of your power because they're taking out the natural gravity-fed systems that nature provides because they want to monopolize and transfer the controls through these climate conditionings, through this climate accord. That's all it's going to do. It's not about the accord. It's what it allows to happen. And if you focus on these accords, I can't do nothing about the accord, and don't realize it's coming home to you, and get prepared to stop locally, the people locally in the seat of decision, to show them, as we're doing, this is a crime, this is a felony, it's a war crime now. It's also, contrary to logic or reason, and on and on and on. And your attorneys are criminals as well. And here's how: if you don't have this type of thing, this type of weaponry at your disposal, you're gonna walk in and lose pretty much, and be one of those people who say, well, I did something and I didn't work, and so I stopped. It's useless. I haven't been wired that way. If I'm doing something that's not working, I figure I've not figured out how to do it right to get it to work. But the interesting thing is when I came from a foundation, when I worked to get the foundation, when I turn my attention to certain things, I don't make the mistakes I used to make that would have caused the defeat in the first place. So you can't look at a place of defeat from a place of defeat or lack of foundation or lack of understanding of what you were actually up against and make decisions today. I'm here to condemn you. I'm here to tell you get a better foundation, you'll be able to be successful. Maybe not in the way you wanted, but you'll be successful in the way you need to be where you are. You need to re-engage. Because these buffoons in Washington will do whatever they can to put this agenda, and it ends up costing you in the developed Western world your time and energy and money. They'll turn it into money. Eventually you have to go work for it. And then they're going to take away your work. They're going to cover up the crimes of the world. They're going to allow the war of terror against you and everywhere. They're not going to give you the truth. This Obama character, I told you, he was a scourge. He proves it every darn day. We talked about the 28 pages, give or take, whatever that's going to turn out to be, may expose the Saudis who came up before the presentation and tried to threaten the United States. Well, right after that, Obama responds to the Saudi threat to dump treasuries if its role in September 11th is probed, and he essentially gave cover for them. What $750 billion in bucks in Treasury securities or profit assets in the United States has to do against quadrillions, I don't know. But they covered anyway. Obama covered the Saudis. Well, they're also covering the war in Yemen, another war crime. So you're dealing with people that are war criminals, if we didn't understand it before. This is Obama. This is the people that works with him. This guy is arrogant. He has his Secretary of State go sign a climate accord, completely baseless and wrong-headed and everything else, making war on you that way. That's another war. You don't see it, but there it is. It's a war on you. You won't see it because it comes so incrementally through other parts of things that you use and you don't recognize. That's how they're defeating you. The Western world had things. They end up taxing those things. You don't even see it. You need power, they're going to tax you. They'll raise your rates. It goes smart to get it by the minute. You think at some point everyone's saying, oh, I'll be able to wash my laundry at 2 in the morning. You think you want to do that firstly. Secondly, do you think that's going to last long enough? When you start pulling power at 2 in the morning, they're not going to charge you there too? Oh, because they had to build the systems and the big batteries and the big pumping systems and the stations to get you the power at 2 in the morning. You're going to pay just like the day. You jump from the frying pan to the fire with these people. You hear the nonsense and you don't respond. Well, we might respond a little bit. Obama infuriates the Brits as he threatens the UK to the back of the K if they vote to leave the European Union. This guy has a track record of abuse and destruction. And he dares to go to the Brits to say you can't exit the EU. Otherwise, we're going to penalize you. And nobody says much about this. The Brits kind of come out. There's a couple of people that talk about this in the papers, and they talk about this in the thing, but there's not an outcry. I'm hoping that there is. This is early on. He has the gall to go someplace else and says, you need to get stay in the EU, or else I'm going to put you at the back of the K for a different type of trade deal, which may not happen because it's going to take so long. It's funny how TTIP didn't take so long. It took a few years while the megalopolies were working it out for themselves. But apparently that wasn't consistent with what UK was actually looking for. But here's the threat. The United States government's even threatened Britain. These are just bullies and brutes. See, they need the EU because it's part of the tool that imposes all this other stuff as well. So they attack through the monetary situation, which is why we have to kind of leave that system. And I don't know if you noticed, and it wasn't a prediction, and I'm not going to take credit because it's just a dynamic and it can change But I hope you noticed last week I told you it was about $1,500 $100 face value for so-called junk silver. This week I think it went to $1,760 when the yuan came on to the market. And it's looking, and things jumped, and it came into stable. But I think they're going to do it smart. They're bringing it in slow. All this stuff comes slow underneath your actual perception. So now China will have more control of the global market. Well, they did also the BRICS. See, this is what the BRICS was supposed to be, and I told you that's just a false antagonist to the IMF, the World Bank, the Development Bank there. But it's enough of a threat that they can't get leveraging to China and Russia. That you also notice that what popped up is attack on Brazil. Excuse me. Before that, I did a report on Argentina. Remember, she got taken out as well. And then now they're going after the other criminal in Brazil. They're all criminals, but they're criminals to a game that the United States doesn't want to see happening, which is BRICS. And so an interesting dialogue came up with Paul Craig Roberts. His title here, Washington Launches Its Attack Against BRICS. And he points out and goes through the lineage, and how he explains this issue with the president of Argentina, how they're going after now Brazil because they want to weaken the BRICS condition. Notwithstanding, the officers of BRICS are also officers of the IMF, remember? And so there's this, you just see the United States government moving and coming around and won't let anybody do anything to protect themselves. We pivot over to China, start putting more pressure over on China. China sends their submarines over our west coast and says, Little bitty North Korea now launching nuclear-capable ballistic missiles for submarines. You know, as I said, the United States has quite the hubris to say that they can anticipate they can destroy all these people, because that's what it's going to end up coming to. Why? Because the economy that's coming down is not going to be there. They're going to have to invent something. But Paul Craig Roberts goes through some interesting dialogue. It's pretty straight up. What else are you going to say? This is exactly what's going on. They're now attacking Brazil. Brazil was a shining star. IMF put lots of money into Brazil. That's when a long time back you heard the aircraft company start up and they made some pretty decent airplanes. Now they're being attacked. Their governments are being destroyed. However criminal the people are in, they're just not in for the United States, that you're seeing the global dynamic that's actually in front of your face. This is what happens locally to you if you haven't figured that out. They put people in, they take people out. It all depends on whether or not you're witnessing how it's going down. They put it on your back. Also, this is how this works. You don't realize that they're coming in. Like when I get to the property, see, you as a property taxpayer, or even through your rents, if you're a tenant, that means that you are going to pay for these, what I call black hole funding streams, that bring all this stuff into your locale. It ends up being 100% federal, from what I can tell. And this debt keeps building, and these things, they use that as GDP. So it behooves the government to become a debtor, even greater on the books than it already is. Again, this is beyond me to understand. It's just not logical. It's not reasonable. I'm not wired that way. How do you dig a hole and say you got something? But that's what the debt economy does. And they pin it to you. And you accept the medium, which is these notes. On their face, they tell you that it's an evidence of debt, and you think that it's paying for something. Which everybody would actually do that. Maybe if you think you had an IRS debt to pay because you didn't understand how to contact when they contacted you or for not payment, you didn't ask them where your evidence of the due process that was given to make the person liable for the activity you were doing, and where did they order you to keep make records and keep books? Who says that? No, they'd rather argue, our 861 doesn't apply. It does not apply to me. Well, you just argued 861. You said that the tax code did apply. You're just unhappy with 861. How about if you argue the whole tax code doesn't apply and then don't care about 861? So your first fault was your fatal flaw. You think you're going to get inside the code that they invented and you're going to argue it doesn't apply? No, how about if you just don't make the notice, the record, that it doesn't apply? So we heard that as long as the government's coming up with these debt notes and they have more expenditures and overhead, they call it GDP. How the heck do you do that? Boy, that's more bean magic, isn't it? Talk about Jack and the Beanstalk magic. U.S. government is now a major counterparty to a Wall Street derivatives. This talks about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You really need to kind of see this, but there's something, why even fixed on this? We can talk about this stuff on and on. You understand the facial thing they're telling you. They're telling you that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which is the United States institutions anyway, are on the hook for, again, billions and billions. Funny money, as far as I can tell anyway. But let me suggest something to you. And what happens when you do get involved a little bit more integrated than what you're told on the internet? A friend of mine works as helping a friend of his who got hit by one of these foreclosures issues, a MERS condition. And it's come down quite a few years. No, they don't give you justice, all right? They're trying to figure out how to make this thing legitimate is what they're trying to do, is what it looks like. And we anticipate that. And so we do what we can to thwart that. And we use all the rules that we can find in order to do that. And this guy is the guy that I learned to start to understand to address the system from. So he knows a lot. We split paths, so I learned a whole lot different, but we learned compatible things, so we get together and kind of support each other. That it comes out that it's possible, if you look deep enough, for all y'all having even MERS problems, or foreclosure issues, or wonder about the title of the property you're going to buy, that if Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac is claiming that they have possession by way of this documentation, I can tell you that it's almost been almost 3/4 of a year now on a demand to produce the proof that the United States government, through these institutions, owns these properties, that it's being held to be bailed out for. They can't produce the title themselves. Did you understand what I just said, folks? Truly. This is a fraud from the top, the highest, to the bottom. There is no title that anybody is claiming that they can be paid for, it appears. I say it appears because you always hold out, maybe the letter will come tomorrow. Oh yeah, the government gives itself 60 days to respond. It gives this big sovereign, gives itself license to wait you out. This has been way beyond 60 days, I can tell you, folks. And this is on a whole lot of other paper filing. Couldn't know where to begin with, y'all. But when you see this fraud, you see how it works, you know what to go, where to go ask, and who to ask, and what advantage to take against people that think that they're going to answer for you, into a situation to try and ameliorate their problem. You find out they just stick their foot in their mouth when you know what's going on. That this story for you, it says that the United States is a counterparty to Wall Street derivatives, but you believe that it was based on some actual function. That they took on the debt, they took on the titles to cover you. And we're finding out through the back door, and not me, I'm just watching another friend as we talk. I explain what I see needs to be done. He does what he needs to do. We are finding out that Freddie Mac, it doesn't matter. Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac may not have, and doesn't at this point, they do not and have not proven that they even have the title. They got paid money to ameliorate. That's how broke this is, folks. Talk about broke. Talk about debt system. This is broke. So there's a fraud on the cover of this even, folks, is I guess the point. When I say challenge authority, challenge title, this is where it's at, folks. Regardless of whether or not you get instant justice, because you're living in an open-air prison. You're living in a criminal conspiracy. You were living in a war zone. The battlefield America was it was just the acknowledgement to you that you were living in not the place you thought you were. That was the notice you were required to step up and find the ways to step up. Not find the ways to continue ignorance or apathy, to find the ways to deal with this thing. Because this is the stuff they do to affect your life, whether or not you recognize that. If you understood this is what they're doing, you realize the house of cards, even these things that are recognized everywhere as being valid, is. And it expands the ability for you to see how heinous these criminals can plan, I guess is one of the things. But it becomes when when I see this stuff for myself, I didn't understand that they didn't. I thought, you know about the splitting of the mortgage and the note. You know about that, but there's not even that. How bad this thing, how much crime is going on, how much GDP was claimed to be going on in all this. The failure of the TARP, it didn't exist. It's just something that they did transfer of funds. This is a big plunder going on everybody. In a system that's just funny money system anyway. So in my mind, you take that into account. What I do in looking at the land disposal is completely irrelevant to it, though. Isn't it? If you think about it, it's irrelevant, isn't it? The only relevance is they use this to commit the theft by extortion upon innocent people. That most people don't understand how to discuss it this way, and so they allow this system to continue on and go on and on with this to make it look legitimate, or to legitimize this type of thing. The whole thing is a big house of cards, absolutely. The insiders, it's not even just Wall Street, it's the people inside that have figured this thing out and taking advantage of you. I suppose you shouldn't be so right with that. I surmised last week about this yuan coming off and going to gold standard and didn't quite know how that was going to work, but your commodities were now kind of going unrealistically. The fix was also into the commodities. And so I didn't know how they were going to adjust all this to make it look normal. But interestingly, and I guess by the nature of the beast here, right after the broadcast, I think Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember now exactly when, Zero Hedge comes on, Commodity Trader says, what is happening has absolutely no reasonable explanation. And you can read this story, and I'll bring this up, not to say, oh, wow, the commodities are being fixed. No, you just have to know there's a proof. Someone inside the system can't make sense of it anymore. I told you when it stops making sense, you better look elsewhere for the answer. There's no reasonable explanation for what's going on. So when you look at what you're dealing with, especially like this, getting into maybe silver coins and this and that, when the numbers don't start to jive, you better bring a foundation to your life. That weight and measure was that type of silver coin. Silver was it's the poor man's gold, if you will. It's an everyday response to what we need amongst ourselves. If we find out that's making no sense, and the fix is in. You have to not look at silver as an investment. As I was telling you, you look at it to have it because it's weight and measure in coin, and you use it as the medium we should have never left from. To work out with people around you, that's what you use instead of anything else. All you're looking for in money is that it's trustable. Remember, confidence in something is really the currency. That's why I told you when the unqualified one, Obama came up and said, if you don't trust the government, we have a problem. I said, we have a problem. This story before about everyone's getting into it's on your back, or the government is a counterparty. Folks, it created this. It's not a counterparty. It's the one who committed the crime. I don't even think that's a question. I think I've actually read some things long back as I just flashed. I think I've read it. It's been identified. This was a setup. So the bottom line I want to get to this commodity thing is that your commodities are fixed. We would kind of expect it, but even people inside, at least one guy, didn't realize that it was that fixed. That what's ever happening right now has no reason behind it. And I'm going to suggest to you it was never had reason behind it. And that just tells you it was the system that you're basing your reality against is false. I guess that's the main key. That's why the weight and measure silver coin utility is important, because it's a weight and measure. It's foundational. For you constitutional people, you can find it in the Constitution as that. You find an authority that's black and white written. All this other stuff, it's puff and smoke. As I talked a long time ago, as I said that, it comes back again. It's all puff and smoke. If you don't believe in the house of cards, it's just puff and smoke. You can get the smoke blown in your eyes if you want. Or you can see through what's going on and not rely on any of it and realize we are in the day. You better be, we talked about preppers for a while. You haven't heard a lot about all that, but you had better be not just a prepper. You better be situated in a way and situating yourself in a way to weather this climate, this war on you. And so it's all at the same time. It didn't seem kind of not too. They were talking about it. Didn't seem too surprising that all you're all having to have a $20 bill looking at Jackson. That's going to change. The big story was, Jackson was going to be replaced by Harriet Tubman, but Hamilton was spared. I had a whole bunch of ideas about this, but the face on the $20 bill is going to be Harriet Tubman coming in. I think they were talking maybe as the new designs will be coming out in 2020. When I've looked at these notes. See, these are evidences of debt. You look on the face of these notes, and these are the pictures of people on the money. The system the people who made the system is notifying you has some worth to them. Jackson is not going to be removed from that bill. He's going to be put on the back, as I understand. Why is he being retained at all is because he is what tried to stop this banking system, and he didn't actually prevail. He is the notice to the world that you can try, but you will not prevail against us. You see, when you go look at the faces of the people on the money, they were instrumental in bringing the system on or trying to stop it and fail. And there's only a few bills, so there's only going to be a few faces. The biggest joke of which I think was the one who was put on the most expensive one bill, I believe, or the $10,000 bill. I think the $10,000 bill was the one that was I guess for public circulation, and the $100,000 was not. But they're bills. Now, some of them would be based in certificates of gold amounts, and those are then you trust whoever has the receipt that you can hand this receipt back to get your gold. But the face of this change here is interesting. When I looked into what my thoughts about Harriet Tubman, what my thoughts were, and I started looking at what they were doing, it was interesting to me to put my theory upon who the faces are on these bills, these evidences of debt, the honor to the system, whether by bringing it on and supporting it or attempting to destroy it and failing, was that if you look at what Harriet Tubman did, she was announced to be she's a woman. She was an abolitionist. She was a black woman, an abolitionist, and she was also connected to civil rights, or attributed to her. And this is the serious problem I have. I don't know who she was. They're telling us about her. I looked at the things they're attributing to her. And I'm suggesting to you on my theory of who's on those bills and why, and it's not a good thing. But they're exposing to you a woman who supported suffrage. But you looked at that, and that ends up being suffrage. I made a tweet to this, and I don't remember now what it says, but it's, you've got 140 characters to say that. She is on that bill for bringing in suffrage and civil rights. Remember, my listeners know when I say civil rights what I'm talking about. And when you see that she's on that bill, I think that makes confirms a little bit better what my view on these people who are on these pictures about what they're telling us. She was a promoter of women's suffrage. Remember, women are treated as men. This is a whole violation to people. Women are treated as men. Suffrage is vote. That's franchise. You're a property. You're a utility for something else. You also happen to come in as a resident, to enjoy that civilization, that civil nature. You had to agree you were an entity that was subject to something else. You were not free. You then got registered for the tax rolls as women. You became another host for the parasite. Civil rights. Very carefully, folks, if you haven't heard this before and you're listening to the broadcast for the first time or recently, go to 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. Cutting to the chase. Your civil right, your equal right amongst every other legal entity subject to the United States is to pay exactions of every kind. Exactions only having one definition is extortion, and wrongful extortion at that. Figure that one out. That under C of 42 U.S.C. 1981, it says that something about non-governmental organizations will have control of that. Think about the UN here and their non-governmental organizations. This is done back in 1860s. That she is being touted, someone from her time was the 1900s, is being touted to be put on this bill, I found interesting from my view. And this may be my opinion. So it's not black and white. Certainly don't have the black and white on their intention. I know what they say. But when you look at what they're actually promoting by putting her on this bill, this is a slap in the face of everyone. This is not much different than, and I don't know that he wasn't doing it willfully, Martin Luther King. And I told you about his, I Have a Dream, and the content of his character speech. Remember, character means obligation. It's the content of your obligation. What the heck is he talking about? Free people don't have obligations. Not anymore that they don't agree to, but not presumed. So, he's speaking the content of we all should be judged to the content of a character. He's also a civil rights promoter. He's also known for that. Whether or not he actually understood it that way, that's what he's being characterized to have done. Harriet Tubman's been doing the same way. She's now the face. Okay, I won't say anything about that face, but she is being put out now to evidence suffrage and civil rights. And lots of people are saying that's a cool thing. And behind the woodshed we have a little different view, and it's not my opinion that way that I can point to you these things. It's not my opinion. I can show you what civil rights means and exactly what it says and who it attached to and who was already under it when it was imposed upon the freedman. It was imposed upon the freedmen and women equally as an imposition of exaction as it was already upon the white citizen. Says it right in that statute, 42 U.S.C. Section 1981. And if that don't twist your brain around, I don't know really what would. You need to go read some more. That statute has captivated me since I read a decade and a half ago. And it fit right in at the time to show me, because I was under a question, is it really upside down? Are we really being shown an upside down reality? And that statute pretty well answered that question. I haven't had that question since then. And I don't think anybody that reads it and does the analysis has any question anymore either. Again, let's spend a little bit more time on this than I think I thought of. Harriet Tubman, however great the woman was, however she was or wasn't, I don't know, is being characterized to be a champion of suffrage, not suffrage. Suffrage is voting, giving the right to vote, which most people don't have a clue about the connections that makes. Talk about adhesion contracts. Suffrage and civil rights. And I'm here to tell you, I know that civil rights is no good. I also know that myself, that suffrage as a vote, if I can't extend to put a little E in between the F and the R, not F in like the F in network, but E and R, F and E are suffrage. If I can't do that, well then even voting's no good enough. But if I can just give me a little license to do that, suffrage, isn't that what civil rights is? And suffer means to continue a harm to you. Why I suggest you're walking in this world at this point as an accessory to the crime against you. It's really it's a lot in that short paragraph. It tells us just a ton of the wrong against us that this woman, right or wrongly, is going to be attributed for when it gets to the bill, the $20 bill. The evidence of debt, the obligation upon you, the exaction of every kind. How fitting, to my mind, I don't know if you've thought about it that way. I don't know if you've, connected it up for yourself. I hope you did without me suggesting it, because again, I really wonder how many people listen to what I'm saying to understand that this is all connectable. And in a way more reasonable than what we've been told. Right? I mean, because it doesn't make sense that you have all your rights being taken down when you think you have a constitutional right to be free from this oppression and abuse and whatever all other crime it is, when it's happening to you. And yet when you look at civil rights as the right to pay exactions, extortions, abuse, that makes more sense that that's what's going on. That's how I view, that's a category, how I view the world actually works. And I found myself a lot more successful taking that reality, that as a reality, and working through that reality more than just saying, well, I have this constitution over here that's this, it's kryptonite against the government. Doing that hasn't worked. And I don't know why people continue to wave that little pamphlet. When I found out in the disposal laws, that pamphlet is actually being worked. I don't have to speak about the pamphlet. I can just speak about the fact that it's been fully fulfilled within the land disposal laws, and that there's an obligation and duty on the government and its agents to not harm me. That they cannot transcend to make a civil right. You got to really put these connections and statuses together and stop shoving everything together and then coming to the idea you can do nothing about it. I don't think I'm speaking too utopiistic, especially when we can apply these things and they have a force and effect in people, whether by being the criminal or by being just an innocent bystander. Being a good girl or a boy or girl going through life and finding out, wait a minute, I wasn't told completely. Maybe not even, I wasn't told completely. And these smart men and women start finding out, whoa, there's something else to understand. Those people we don't make criminals. And those people we try to give more information as they see it, that they try to still fulfill their role as blindered as it is, to do the next better thing. It's kind of like taking these county commissioners and saying, did you know there was this little aspect of the law that can actually aid your county that's being destroyed by the insiders that need to destroy it, and the attorneys that support that. But there's a law that actually says different than what you've been experiencing in your life. Those people take this on like a baton. This foot race I think we're in. So as I'm coming to the end of my ability to produce, to be the example or give the direction that I think I can give, that when I reach the time I can't hand that baton, I hope when I go down, as I'm going down, I see the backsides of a few people carrying a baton running like crazy. That's all I can hope for. I can ask for better, that we get this thing done before I go down, but I'm hoping at least I get to look, or over my shoulder I look as I'm going down, the people that are still coming, that there are people coming to follow the example that I'm trying to show is there to follow, and there's better to do than what I could do, and some of you are better than me to do it. Because we're being told wrong, and we are deserving of better for sure, but we're not in a way, because when we were insulted and disrespected, we accepted the abuse, and we became complacent in our victimhood. So it takes courage to stand up. And I'm not saying just go blindly into the war. You just don't go blindly naked into the battle. The reality is, though, when you find yourself naked in the battlefield, what do? You're going to probably, any sane body would, any sane people would just find cover real quick, wouldn't you? Most people a lot of people aren't that intelligent. They have no common sense to even do that. They just blindly charge and they get taken down because they just respond. The animal instinct is to just respond, flight or flight. No one says, wait a minute, stop and think. Stop, think, observe, and then redirect your action in an intelligent way. And then there's that fine line, how you got to stop learning at some point. You don't ever stop learning. What I'm saying is you got to start putting into practice what you have learned. That's why I hope I can accelerate for those of you that are doing this. Take what you learned. If hopefully give you direction on how to start applying it better. Then you learn as you apply to do it even better. It's like an accelerating type of thing. But these people that are shaping your reality, that shape your awareness, that put the stuff in front of you, these depth notes, and put Harriet Tubman on, as fine a woman as she may have been, I'm suggesting that she's being used as nothing more than a notice to you of your servitude right there on the bill. These people are everywhere to do this. They will tout something that is your destruction. And you don't know better, and so you agree with it because you don't under what they call the backstory. You don't know that backstory. I'm asking you to know that backstory. I'm not telling you how to think about it or what to do when you see it. I'm just saying you got to learn it. That's the battlefield. Because the battlefield is such as that you can be played, and if you don't understand it, that's what happens, that you also get in herd mentality and being played. That's probably the worst thing. That's democracy. That's mob rule. That's what the military works from. It loves that condition. Well, I've told you your answer is not mobbing up with people, but starting to become independent and work with objective basis and integrity and responsibility to yourself and those around you, those that you love, and the people that you may not even know that you still love as just people. I don't know. I'm not getting to the love thing. I mean, I don't know if I have an evil intent for anybody, even people that are nasty. I just want them to do better. Just to stop hurting people. Let's start there. But so here we have these people that are in deceits of decision of the policies that are being made. One of our institutional arch nemesis, which we have an agent inside of who's like a cancer to them. I talked to you about last week was UC Berkeley. They make all these agenda policies. They're really the hub, at least the Western hub for this stuff. Whatever they say goes as far as how they're going to implement it. They got their own think tanks as part of the university systems in the States. Your university systems are being used against you. The Marxist, Socialist, Soviet, whatever plunder, a parasitic organism comes from these universities, but Berkeley's a big one. So here's the notice to us of how this all works. If you didn't quite understand what I'm talking about with Agenda 21 and how they use you and how they take migration principles and get you to run around and how they get you to think and how they give you a little candy here and a candy there and you take them up thinking that's what you want. And so that someone comes up and says, well, let's make a minimum wage so that we can make sure that everyone has a basic living. You don't realize that's going to be your austerity point. But that you're going to be given this, but you forget there's a dynamic. It's kind of what I think of, as I understand Colonel Sanders, the Bernie guy. He's kind of talking about, the government's going to give you all this stuff. Well, that comes from some place, even as made up as it is. And the real people having to balance against this imposition have to do the reality thing. That Berkeley was one of the proponents of having the minimum wage in California. And so they promoted this. And here's a story about the ramifications of following the people that have the agenda. This is what happens to your life. It's going to be good for the industry. It's not going to be so good for you. And don't forget, the robots are coming to make your hamburgers, so you're going to be out of those jobs as well. But labor markets, hundreds of employees at the University of Berkeley, California at Berkeley, are getting schooled in basic economics as the $15 minimum wage just cost them their jobs. Too bad the liberal elites fighting for a $15 don't get it. The week after California Governor Jerry Brown, I have identified as a war criminal myself. International law of desertification. His state is one of the biggest deserts right now because of his policies. He's a war criminal. He's also a treaty violator. He's in league with another brown shirt up in Oregon, another Kate Brown. His Brown name. I hope I'm not insulting the Brown family, but these people are bad seed. Governor Jerry Brown signed this very same policy in now for your wages. It signed a state's $15 a wage boost into law. And UC Berkeley Chancellor Nicholas Dirks said in a memo to employees announcing that 500 jobs were getting cut. Article asks, coincidence? He says not really, or she says not really. I think it is. See, I believe in coincidences. The only thing is I wonder, is there a meaning? Of course it's a coincidence. Of course it's connected. This is the reality. I won't read more. This is what the agenda puts on you. It forces you, you want $15 an hour? Yeah, I want $15 an hour. You don't understand there's a reality underneath it, and they're not here for you. They're not here for they're not here for you with the technocratic future, the technocracy future coming up where there is machines going to take your place. I didn't realize this. I can't remember what other country it was. Romania, I think. They already have automatic fast food dispensaries at McDonald's or something. They don't have any workers there. I suppose they have technicians behind the scenes. They don't have any workers anymore. So UC Berkeley, the global governance policy magnate, promotes $15 an hour jobs, and as soon as that goes in, they kill 500 jobs. That's your future, folks. That's just there. It's going to be everywhere. This is the reality. If you don't understand the game, you're going to fall for it. You're going to gang up in your herds, and you're going to go outside, and you're going to push your signs around and your banners. And for some reason, the occupied type mentality has bigger groups, but it's all going to be for naught. As it says in the article, the liberals don't get it. Nobody gets it, folks. I don't even put it liberals. There's nobody that's getting this. Well, maybe those of us behind the woodshed have a glimpse. The other thing I told you, this Agenda 21, this climate thing, all this nonsense that's coming down on us. Remember Flint? I told you when Flint, Michigan came up, I said there's probably a public-private partnership behind that, and we found out that there was. Everything I said was pretty accurate. Even though I'm just reading from the news, I'm just looking at their words. Someone stands up to protect themselves against this flagrant violation that's happening in Flint, Michigan. A woman causes a lawsuit. And if you don't understand the battlefield, and maybe I wouldn't have known to be considering this except for maybe it's that dangerous there, maybe that should have been a clue. The way you can position yourself, what you let out for information and to whom, becomes very important in survival. That the Flint woman who's suing over poisoned water was found shot to death in her home. I don't bring this up to do the sensationalism. This is a serious consequence. I can't tell you that what it was done, why she was killed. She was killed with a friend. Who they didn't kill was the baby that was in the room, her baby. A year old, I think it was. And because I can't tell you that it's a direct consequence, I can't really connect this to you, but this reminded me of the very real danger when you step up that you need to know, not to not step up, to know to take a lesser position, take a lesser vulnerable position. Can position yourself with certain protections. There's ways to do it. Be cognizant of this condition. As applied to what we do, I don't walk around as a paranoid. I realize that you're dealing with a monster, a beast. And they have no scruples. And you can be too smart to be a cop, and all the things I tell you. It doesn't mean we don't do things, but we do them in a particular way so we're not vulnerable to these, if this was a surprise attack. I don't know that it's connected. But we can't tell that it wasn't. It doesn't mean that someone else may not step up, but see, they're being told, don't mess with this. My sense of this is, I'd rather err on the side that it is a message. And I'd rather err on the side of caution. And say, this was connected. And then I would proceed with that knowledge. Knowing that when you go up against a brute, an organized criminal, when you're going up against something that even the mafia itself would love to be, this is serious, and you need to protect yourself. It's that organized. This is not, to me, it's just shocking, it's a surprise, but it's not in some regard. If it is what I thought it was, it's not much different than the stories we're hearing, which we also can't connect so clearly, though we see connections within the science of those doctors that are being killed, where they found a certain enzyme that the industry knows about that causes a protection to cancer cells. That when you understand that and you know that's what you're after, you can stop that. That those doctors that are identifying that particular thing are being gone. This is the thing I'm talking about. It's not that you don't make it known. You don't make it known and put yourself out there vulnerable. As it was told to me by the Forest Service, one of the prior retired Forest Service district ranger, after what we had been in communication with the Forest Service through them attacking our mining claim and making it, they were trying to make it something it wasn't. I've been talking to him for maybe 2 years. When I finally met him at a town hall meeting that I was invited to talk about the 1872 mining law, to a challenge against it, and some people that were property owners were wanting to kill the 1872 mining law because they thought it was a scourge. And so I went there to explain to them, but this is just property rights, and if you affect our property rights, you're affecting yours. And when they heard that, they finally listened and heard that, they completely changed their whole idea about what we were talking about. Why I tell you it's so important to understand land law, soil law, and disposal law. That we also had this Forest Service guy that I had been communicating by mail, never met him. And the way I communicated, they don't know where we are. They can't go hunt you down. That was one of the other things I observed. If they can hunt you down, you're really vulnerable. So you make it difficult for them not to hunt you down so easily. That after a couple of years of dialogue, I meet him, the criminal that he was. Cheery, we're smiling. I shook his hand. He goes, it's out of the blue. We've been looking for you. That moment gave me confirmation that the way you situate yourself is all important. If they'd been looking for me, I'd say why. They knew where to send a letter, but they were looking for me because I have the theory that I work on that's better. We're in a military occupation, and their military soldiers will be after you when you stir their nest. And they were looking for me, and they couldn't find me. And I'm standing right here. What do you have to say? That I'm suggesting to you based on the prior story that not knowing that was connected. This is a reality. You don't want to put yourself vulnerable. You look wherever if you start reading enough, you'll realize how to do that. You saw a little bit of it, but this is probably extraneous. Why I didn't even do it. It's a little more extraneous, a little bit more than what I was focused on in this thing with the Panama Papers, which you haven't heard too much about since it popped out. It's a big noise. It's a little confetti in the sky. As I told you, it was a non-incident. It was just something to get us focused. But they told us some things in there. You can do something like that in wherever you are, and you don't make yourself vulnerable. I found this information in the Motor Vehicle Code. When you find out that their regulations can't touch something, I'm telling you to go do that. Did that help you there? Is that obvious? When something in the statute says it can't touch it, it can't recognize it, I'm telling you to create your character in that place. Create the evidence and the facts to qualify that thing they can't touch. Remember, this is your filing of a paperwork to the government which they accept. That if you can't fulfill what they need, they can't accept. My question to you is then, do you still have an underlying right to do something? Well, if they never had jurisdiction over what you're doing, then certainly not. That's why you've proven, self-evidently, they had no jurisdiction in the first place. It also turns out that when you do it that way, they just start looking for you. They can never find you. We've been looking for you. Think about that. That was kind of a creepy statement, to my mind. We've been sending plenty of letters to the guy. Didn't have to look for me at the post office. It was right there. Just send me a letter. I'm right there. But see, that's not what he's talking about. They were looking for me. Why? That's the problem. You want to limit that. We did. We have at this point. Even so, till today. I don't get the harassments that I hear lots of other people do. And so there's more to this. But it's all, I found all this stuff out by reading their statutes, and you look for their limitations. I talked to you about it in the Title 26 for the tax code. It's in the due process that's required. There's a limitation. If you know that, that's your first answer on the administrative side. The answers are really simple here. Because you need to be able to have more than just your opinion in a pamphlet that says it's a constitution. They're so beyond that it's not even funny. I mean, they told us they're way beyond it. They're way beyond international law. There's no recognition. They're just abject evil in the world. And so it shouldn't surprise us that we look inside some agency that we're supposed to be believing we're trusting. We put that trust, that confidence in to protect us. To find out, we hear the stories, but here's more coming out of the integration of all these things I've talked about today: the Wall Street money, the agency, the agendas, all these players. Former FDA Commissioner Margaret Hamburg, named in a massive conspiracy and racketeering lawsuit involving Johnson & Johnson, a Wall Street hedge fund, and Lavaquin drug. So we know that this is going on, but now there's supposed to be a lawsuit. Well, have you ever thought about maybe looking at how do you go out? Someone go after these people. It's conspiracy, racketeering. What have I been talking about? Conspiracy, racketeering, and theft by extortion. I'm talking about not even having the ability to put an exaction on you and them doing it anyway. Why? Because I found out, even though they have the right to do that, they can only do it in certain instances. You find the limit to that authority that looks so oppressive, and it is there. Whether or not they actually recognize it will be determined on how actually a criminal they are. And that just gives you more self-evident proof to continue. With the new knowledge, you're up against somebody that organized and that don't care. And that comes as a shock, I think, to a lot of people. They really expect that this stuff works like it's supposed to. And you have to be of the mindset. You can't put yourself on short leash and say, I'm going to get this done, I'm going to have this solved and this handled in just a short time. I'm suggesting to you this is the rest of our lives. It was always supposed to be the rest of your lives. You were given something if you could keep it. That was the threat. Nobody perceives it as that, but that was the threat. And they've taken it. And so now if you want it back, you're going to have to go get it. At least they didn't take it, but it makes it look like they've took it. So you're going to have to point that out. And the only thing I can see right now is there's enough of us that see the same thing, that have the same proofs, that can start doing the roundup somehow. And I'm not talking about Satan. But so here's a conspiracy racketeering lawsuit. You could find out, get the lawsuit, see how it reads. Maybe you can do one against somebody else you know local to you. Don't do it wrong. Have your proof. That can be created pretty quickly. To my mind, almost everybody's in the government anymore is a racketeer. The way I see things. I hope it's the way you see things. And all I'm talking about is you read the black and white, you see the limits. And you see where they've extended beyond, and then pretend not to know. That's such a crime on so many levels, I can't even tell you, but that's the opportunity that you have. So now we have the FDA, it's all in bed like we thought. Here's a suit that's going to come out. Okay, innocent until proven guilty. All right, fine. Go read the facts, and you tell me, you become the public opinion of the facts that are listed in that lawsuit, whether or not you can see that there would be a conviction, notwithstanding, because you are walking your case into a corruption. The same corruption that's overseen by the mobster of the government that makes the offices. The one that will throw peanuts out to the gallery periodically to quell the natives so that they don't completely come unglued. As I've told you before, because that's the occupier's main warning in international law. Don't piss off the natives. In paraphrase. No, you won't find that in a section. No, it's just what I say. It's my paraphrase. I guess I have to say I thought about that because I know some people are listening so intently you actually think I'm saying the words out of the law, because I do try to stick to some of that. But in this case, no, that was a paraphrase. International law says for any occupying force, whether it be before, even by conquest, because even by conquest, if you didn't conquest them quite right, and they get really ticked off about that, they can take you out. And if it's occupying force, odds are they will take you out. So you don't want to piss off the natives. It's just a natural law under an international law. And that's what I'm kind of hoping, giving notice of these things in the black and white, it gives you the basis to get to the point when you're just going to say enough is enough, I'm not going to take it anymore. And here's the part I'm going to play to be the part that's going to send the ripple out to hopefully be noticed to everybody. I'm going to be the butterfly right here that causes the tsunami across the globe. I don't know what else to say about that, folks. I don't know what else to put in people's minds to get them encouraged to do something. but it's as easy as getting going and doing, again, the right, correct thing. Because the oppression is there, the organization's there against us, momentum is there against us, and it certainly can't happen then if you are just going to be the boat in the stream headed for the waterfall. But writing is on the wall for these criminals, and the people that may not be criminals but act that way for a long time until they get stopped. And we move on as a saying, you see FDA being involved with the Johnson & Johnson family of company. They make themselves sound like a family. All this illusion. It's just a business. It's a legal entity. It's the resident in a state, right? It's the one that has the home office, the tax office, the tax home. You think your home is where the hearth is. No. In the state, it's where your tax office is, or your principal place of business is. It's where that IRS was supposed to send you the notice and have the meeting that says this is where you're going to keep your book, make records and keep your books. You person liable. Folks, that's it. That's where it's at. So these people that are not people, that are persons, and persons liable to their shareholders, don't care about you, don't think about it, but when they start affecting people and the people start paying attention, it starts to hit their bottom line. And that is something they have to be worried about. And so we see the internalization of the corporate governance structure within the government and being influenced unjustly by external creatures that have been created underneath the authority, called corporations, other legal entities, are seeing the error of their ways, whether or not they stop it and stop being the criminal. They're being affected. So this is another tool that we can look at. It's how we individually decide and what we put our time and energy into and where we put our investment in our lives. What we invest in, that idea of voting with your dollar, so to speak, notwithstanding the debt system. But Monsanto profits drop 25% as farmers and individuals go organic, such that word is, but certainly not Monsanto. Biotech giant Monsanto reported multiple profit plummets in 2015, relating to sales for both its genetically modified crop creations and its best-selling herbicide Roundup. Once again, the Monsanto has reported declining profits for the fiscal second quarter earnings by 25%. So there's other dynamics going on. The farmers aren't voting with their money no more, and the people, the individuals, you call them individuals. Individuals are, that's also another tax word. It's another so it's a legal entity as well. The word individual. If you didn't know that, that's why I have a hard time using words sometimes. But at any rate, so individuals go organic. I don't know. People are. Whatever that word means in their mind, that they're going away, and that's counter to Monsanto's profits, and that, as we see, may be a good thing. So that's the battlefield. It's part of the battlefield. They're going after you, the way you think, how you think, that you can think. They're causing things to happen in your brain. I've been reading all the modifications that happen real time with your genetics. That people are railing against, and it's starting to come out in the bottom line. That's where we look. We look right at the bottom line. That's partly what I was saying about the derivatives that you're supposed to say that's on your back through the Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, whatever the name is there, that they are saying that that's a co-party. No, they're the antagonist here. They're the one that caused it. They're the criminal. They're what they call in law the principal, in federal law. The principal actor. The one liable. And they're watching out for their organized criminal buddies. And Monsanto's one of them, and the FDA now has a lawsuit saying there's a conspiracy and racketeering. All that sits right there. You want to see how to do a racketeering lawsuit? Better look at that case. Maybe you'll see some things. And if it wins, maybe that's the model. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. I certainly don't. Well, a lot of stuff I do, we're kind of going in the first instance, so it's not that I'm inventing a wheel, but we have to look at things in an originating way. Different than what they've been habitualized to. We've been habitualized to. But a racketeering lawsuit is a racketeering lawsuit. It's a very complicated lawsuit, and you have to be well versed before you advance one. But they're not impossible to push. And it sure would out somebody, right? That was almost like running for office. If you do a lawsuit correctly, they can't come back at you. In particular, if you're doing it more like a citizen plaintiff, like a private attorney general, you know how to do that correctly. And they don't come after, and you do it so you're not wrong and they don't come after you. That's no different than running for office and then using the office not to get elected, but to have a platform to tell people, hey, this is what's going on. Moving on, Monsanto and GM cotton banned in top African producer of crop. Burkina Faso is phasing out the production of genetically modified cotton introduced by Monsanto Company, the world's largest seed company, because growers are unhappy with the short length of its fiber. Now, this was fascinating to me on this point. I won't go too much further. You can read, again, Blogcaster has all these, you can read them all. You can see all more and more and more stuff in here. But that alone, that little thing about the shortened fiber, don't you think, folks, if they were looking for actually a better product, they'd be looking out for the product. They wouldn't be looking out for how they could sell more chemicals only. That you think with all their genetic knowledge and engineering that they would make a fiber coming from cotton that didn't pull itself from the market for being non-marketable as a fiber because it's too short? Do you think they would genetically engineer a fiber to be long enough to be a product to be sold? That maybe the geniuses of Monsanto would say, well, hey, if this stuff is falling apart and making too short when we beat it up after processing, maybe we're not going to sell this seed very much. Because there's just not even a fiber long enough to make anything with. Do you think these geniuses at Monsanto would have thought about that? Well, apparently they didn't. And I'm suggesting that's the amount of energy they put into this to think for you about how they were doing and what they were going to sell in the market. And so there becomes a reality, I guess I want to point out in this dynamic that goes on. Monsanto cotton seed, it's all engineered. They got all this fantastic thing they want to tell you that engineering can do, gene engineering, gene modification can do, and they can't do that. That a company, the bottom line is the bottom line. They can't even market. It's like 700,000 tons of this stuff that was just useless, apparently. And so they have to phase it out, and it's not necessarily... I don't know what the decisions around it are. It's not because it's organic or not. It has everything to do with the bottom line. And this company, this large production facility, could not use that cotton. They were sold a bill of goods, and it said we can't continue business. There is a reality, folks. And if you start, like what I'm trying to tell you, focus on the reality. Look past the noise. Look past the nonsense. The bottom line is the bottom line, no matter what you look at here. For the soil disposal, to put it less esoteric, the bottom line is the land, is the soil, is the rights, is the contract, is the law of that land, is the obligations and duties that you can push against government with. It isn't an opinion. It's all by title. It's all written in black and white. That's why to me it's so powerful. Some of these regulations and what their authority, that gets all, like I said, you can't get into Title 26 and argue Section 861 is not applicable when you're agreeing impliedly that it's applicable generally. You have to say it doesn't apply. As a legal entity, you can't. So impliedly, if you agree to argue 861, you're agreeing to be that legal entity, and you've waived your due process when they didn't give it to you. Denied, guilty. That's how that works. But there's a reality out there, and if you don't address the reality, you're going to get hurt. And then a lot of people respond in the wrong way, I think, to that hurt. I'm not saying they're not getting hurt, and I'm not diminishing that harm. I'm not diminishing that victimhood they walked into, that machine that ground them up. I'm critical of how they responded to that. I try to offer ways to get us out of that vicious cycle as well. You rail ineffectively against the machine and let someone else get ground up. But so the truth is coming out. There's realities behind reality. You can't deny climate. You can't deny nature. You can't deny the dynamics in nature too long. In particular, interestingly, the commerce side of this, and this is productive side. Actually, here he said production. Production side is reality on the land. You can't do this for any extended length of time. You can't rely on derivatives. Well, you can get the government to give you subsidies, but it's not going to be production. So you're not going to transfer bucks for actual product that the world needs somewhere. So these governance corporations were supposed to be the save-all for everybody, and their products are not showing to be very well. This is a long time back story, and I'm finally getting to it. New study by USDA. This is even where the internal people are corrupted. USDA proves it was wrong about GE alfalfa. Monsanto's genetically engineered Roundup Ready alfalfa has already cost farmers millions of dollars, and now a new study by the USDA, the same agency that reapproved it, has found that GE alfalfa has really gone wild, literally. So these agencies agree and re-agree, and they're wrong. Bottom line, costing people millions, and these farmers are just being destroyed by this. Monsanto's wrong again. Can they do good stuff? I suppose so. They got enough money and people that are doing it, but they're focusing they certainly weren't focusing on the length of a cotton fiber, were they? You think that might have been the first thing they were doing, right after the stopping the funguses and other things that were, and the beetles that were on it. No, they don't even care about that. But it comes back to bite them. The insect comes back to the commerce insect. The production reality comes back. Nature comes back to bite it. Monsanto can't escape reality. It can get you to believe different than reality. You can get you to buy into their story and fairy tale like government does. Or you can start relying on the natural law and look ahead to see that's the dynamic. That's where it's going, and I'm not listening to all this nonsense. And I'm going to set up a course of this dialogue for people, a course of proof that I don't overwhelm people, but if they have an opinion, I'll say, well, have you looked at this? Have you thought about this over here? You don't have to tell them much more than that. If they're going to be the sponge, they will turn into that almost immediately. And then you understand very quickly why you talk with people and why you won't talk with people. You're not going to communicate to everybody. You can't set your goals based on the outward, successes of of a general acceptance of what you're talking about. It isn't working that way. It hasn't worked that way, and it isn't working that way. So you be careful of putting your hopes too high in knowing this new knowledge that you're finding out how corrupt it is, that you think you can, now that you see it, you're going to solve it overnight. Folks, it's been 3 decades for me. We're so far from solving it, but I'll tell you what, we have a whole lot better eyeball on what's going on in understanding, comprehension, and we also have a whole lot more tools in our belt that are making this thing work to start to slow it up while the rest of people coming on are getting the idea too. There's certain ways. So folks, we don't have to address Monsanto directly. We can educate people that go to their product and say, this is what's going on. This is what's happening. Do you want that to happen to you? That's their choice. You can't make that choice, but you can at least warn them off out of you caring, your empathy for their condition. Maybe even take some time to think out their condition. They've got themselves into a trap they didn't know. How do they work themselves back out? Sometimes the answers aren't so easy. Sometimes they're painful to get out of a trap. And you would know that. I mean, you find yourself to be the lone wolf out there getting chewed up by Monsanto, and in their trap, do you chew off your forepaw? I mean, sometimes that may have to be what you have to do, but that has to be taking the responsibility for your error as well. Sometimes the answers aren't so nice, but you have to do them. I found an interesting little dialogue about GMOs. This Monsanto thing, what companies are doing. I get it through a link through Twitter. Some woman who's some kind of a biotech writer, I don't even know. Really a totally different mindset than I see. I don't know why I found I was following her by accident. I don't even know how I started following her. In a way, it's been kind of interesting to watch the mindset. I send off periodically. She'll bring something forward, and I'll ask her a question. I never get answers, even though they keep talking about how they have to talk to us as scientists. They have to talk to us to explain it to us. And I ask simple questions that 440 characters would do, and there's no really answers coming back. So we have a real big disconnect. But what came through was a very interesting thing, and it's kind of like a mindset as well. But from that mentality of not understand, it's really government. Government can help us, and we're good, and government goes good, and our science is because we say, and all this kind of nonsense ideas that they live in that little cloistered view, but they're superior because they have the training. 6 real consequences of GMO labeling. You may be shocked by number 5. I found this interesting. Not that I was shocked by any of it, but that they compiled this labeling problems. We have a different analysis behind the Woodshed. It was actually used and motivated by the industry itself because there was exceptions underneath the skin of it. But labeling is expensive. And each one of these things I'm going to lay has a paragraph of discussion. They said labeling is confusing. They said companies will swap out in ingredients. What was interesting about when you read these conditions, like in this case, it was the same WSJ piece above. It included reports on small pasta business that had to make changes to the recipe to avoid labeling hassles and possible penalties. They had been using canola oil, which may be herbicide-tolerant GMO or herbicide-tolerant non-GMO. Surely, even if they were using the non-GMO version, people saw it on the label, the tractor-chasing legal teams would light up with glee. So you start hearing this. They were actually using a product that canola oil. I don't know about, if you looked at research canola, I don't care how it's made. It looks like an industrial lubricant to me. I don't want it in my food. So where these people are arguing and talking about, labeling is causing trouble, and the types of collateral damage it's making or unintended consequences, I'm starting to read through this and saying, well, these people aren't even recognizing the harm the ingredient itself is, notwithstanding its source. Number 4 here was swapping out ingredients raises prices. And even talking about Ben & Jerry's here. These things may or may not happen, but the discussion behind this was pretty fascinating about why these people were interested about highlighting GMOs on labels. Changing recipe alters product, they're claiming in unpleasant ways. And as I said in canola oil, I don't eat food that has hydrogenated oil. If it has canola oil, I will not eat it. I want to see what's in there. I want to know what's in my food. I don't want to have these excuses about what it does to an industry. Maybe it was good that the food wasn't made that way or made at all. Number 5, changing recipe alters the product. And besides some products simply disappearing due to the hassle of finding new sources, other products may get modifications to avoid GMOs with surprising results, which we've watched multiple examples of products losing vitamins as they got their non-GMO project status. In other words, they're making GMO organisms that make vitamins that they put in your food, that they can't do that now. And this starts to show a distinction between the source of the product and the organism of the GMO and the product it makes. If it's making a true sugar, and it's all it is sugar, does it matter what the source is? I'm not so sure. But see, no one's making these distinctions, and there's a distinction that needs to be made. They haven't made that distinction in the law. And so we have quite a bit of things to look at that we're really not getting together with, that we need to get together with, so that we have a basis of foundation that we can make intelligent decisions. Certainly, I don't want this technology, if it's good for us, to be wasted and destroyed. But we certainly can't accept what the government says is what has to be going on for us, because it's all for the bottom line and the pushing of the agenda. They will push climate change, even though, and I got another article I won't get to, the government scientists showed that it's not something that needed to push. But the agenda is a global order, and that's what is against us, and that global order is local to you in non-constitutional, non-Republican form and positions that you have to get engaged with, because that's the creature they created, if you can keep it. Thank you for tuning in today. Appreciate that you keep tuning in. Send the podcast out. Send messages out to maybe other channels, networks that will take this on and synchrocast it at the time, or maybe run it as the pastcast, as UCY.TV does. I appreciate that, Jules, and RealLibertyMedia.com, where the Blogcaster is, and Grimner, and we got Freedom's Network as a social network. People getting together there to try and get a common mind of how do we work this thing through and information. And broadcasters, terrestrial broadcasters, I really appreciate it. And anybody who supports the broadcast, I really do thank you for doing that, because I'm not too good at that myself. So take care. Talk with you next week. Tech diffs and nature will. Well, that's another lesson. I hope with today's information you can take it to those that misbehave. From behind the woodshed, leaving his mark on the beast, this is Hal Anthony. Till next time, journey with purpose.
That's what opening up a can of whoop-ass feels like.
Son,
You just opened a whole case of whoop-ass.